There's fresh controversy in the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine's parliament voted today to end its non-aligned status. This is yet another step toward building stronger ties with the West. Today's vote opens the possibility of Nato membership, which Moscow quickly denounced. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said scrapping the non-alignment status would boost tensions. Ukraine accuses Moscow of supporting a separatist uprising in eastern Ukraine. Ambassador Bill Courtney is the former U.S. ambassador to Kazakhstan and Georgia, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Hey, Bill, it's good to see you.
Hi, Debbie.
Long time no see. Happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, let me ask you, is this vote a real thing? Will it actually move Ukraine toward NATO membership, or is this largely symbolic?
It's not just symbolic, but it's more of that than a real vote. It is a political statement by Ukraine reflecting the views of the people. In 2008, when this issue came up the first time, a Gallup poll in Ukraine showed that 43% of people in Ukraine were opposed to joining NATO. Today, the vote in the parliament was 303 to 8. That shows a pretty near unanimous sentiment in Ukraine for going toward NATO. And that's because Russia has invaded Ukraine.
I was going to say, and this really does signal how times have changed. I believe this vote for non-alignment status was established back in 2010, and that was under pressure from Russia. Is that right?
That's right. President Yanukovych had come to power in an election, and he was fairly close to the Kremlin. So the Kremlin demanded that Ukraine make this statement. The problem is that once President Yanukovych lost so much support in Ukraine, including in the east of Ukraine, where he was from, and fled last February, that 2010 decision really didn't amount to anything.
You know, some are questioning the timing of this. As I understand it, new round of peace talks have just been scheduled, and there's been a back and forth in the tension between the pro-Russian separatists and the central government in Kiev. So the question is, why this vote now?
Well, I think it reflects accumulated frustration and indeed anger at the way Russia has treated Ukraine. And secondly, there has been a ceasefire agreement concluded in Minsk in September, but the Russian-backed rebels and the Russians themselves who have been involved, and there have been some Russian military forces, they haven't really kept up to the agreement. They've continued to shell and fire on Ukrainian forces. So I think the Ukrainians are kind of wondering whether the value of this Minsk process is worth it.
And how likely is Russian retaliation? There have been some strong rhetoric as a result of this vote.
Well, yes. Today the Russians said that they would retaliate both against the vote in Ukraine and also against President Obama signing a new law passed by Congress, which puts a tougher legal framework for sanctions. So today the Russians said they would retaliate against both. We don't know, of course, what will happen yet. It's possible the Russians will stop the flow of gas or do something else to Ukraine, but right now it's unclear.
You know what, I read somewhere that the question was asked, is it in the NATO-aligned countries' interest to have Ukraine in NATO? Does this strengthen the stability of Europe or perhaps destabilize it a bit?
Well, Ukraine is not ready for NATO yet. Ukraine has done some pretty good things, including it sent forces into Afghanistan to join with coalition NATO forces there. They've done some other things. But right now, Ukraine is still too poor to be part of NATO. Members of NATO are supposed to be net contributors to security rather than detractors from it. The per capita income in Ukraine is about half that of NATO's poorest current member, Bulgaria. And so with that kind of disparity, it suggests that Ukraine would need more aid and wouldn't really be able to provide much security help to the rest of the alliance.
Understanding all that, if they were to become a member of NATO in the future, and President Petro Poroshenko said that that's what he was going to work toward, said it wouldn't come soon, how far in the future might it be? I know you're speculating, but just guess for us.
Well, let's think in terms of 5 to 10 years. It's pretty clear at this point now, Ukraine will become a member of NATO, and that's something that NATO promised at a NATO summit in Bucharest in 2008. But it's going to take a while for Ukraine. Ukraine first has to make some massive economic reforms, and only today did the Ukrainian government begin to outline what those reforms might be. Everyone's been waiting for that. But it's going to take a while for those reforms to work their way through the economic system to boost per capita income so that Ukraine will be able to afford to be part of NATO.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Bill Courtney, as always, it's great to talk to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Debbie.